race has been like a social construct that we've had to do basically to create political majorities where we've had minorities, so in certain instances when we're in certain tribes, we count out, okay, what are the numbers in this tribe? And if there's conflicts in this tribe, we try to resolve it by saying, okay, the majority should win. And if that wasn't possible, then, there'd be other ways to diminish the other party's minority through violence.
Hello, my name is Donald, and welcome to the #1 media company, WorldView. At WorldView, we explore everyone's perspectives on all things that can broaden our worldview. Today, we have with us Nota Baloyi, South African rapper, music executive, and entrepreneur. Nota is also an intellectual of worth and someone I definitely look forward to having a conversation with. Nota, thank you for your time. Welcome to the show.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. I used to be reluctant to be first introduced as a rapper because it used to represent, a criminal background of sorts in the past. You needed to have some criminal track record to be a rapper back in the day. So, it's something I've been reluctant to do, but, I actually should embrace it more. How are you?
Some of the most successful people in the world are rappers.
True. True. Yes, that's true. That's true. I don't think. So some of the most successful people in the world, and some of them are also failed rappers.
That's also true. Well, like everything in life. But
yeah.
Nota, based on our previous conversation, I'd really like to start on this topic. You mentioned the Takatso Consortium, the company that bought the 51% share in South African Airways, and you said there's quite a backstory to this. Can you tell our viewers that story?
Yeah, well, I mean, the Takatso Consortium, right, consists of one part is Harith and Partners, right? And the other part of the company is the former owners of Kulula and now current owners of Lyft Airlines. So with regards to Takatso Consortium, the Harith and Partners, have been very big benefactors of, grant funding from the Public Investment Corporation, which at some point in time was headed up by Jabu Muleketi, who is one of the directors at Harith and Partners, as well as, what is it? It would be Arena Holdings, who are the owners of Times Live, the Sunday Times. I think Sowetan Live as well falls under them, even though they sold Sowetan, their actual newspaper, and Sunday World to Fundudzi Media.
And so it's basically, to a certain degree, a media company that's buying a large share in South African Airways, and a big. It's not an obscure company. This Takatso Consortium. It's amazing that we don't know more about this company.
Yeah, I mean, it's a consortium that has just come about for the purposes of taking over SAA, and to take over SAA for 51 rand as well, and also ensure that all the liabilities that you would have inherited gets taken care of by the taxpayer prior to you actually, getting the keys to your new apartment, so to speak, or your new airport lounge. It's just a little bit, it leaves a sour taste in one's mouth. And the mere fact that the media that is supposed to be questioning this is the same media that is owned by this Takatso Consortium means that there's no one to question this at all. So the general public is being sold a solution to a problem that obviously cannot be solved, which is, you can't solve the problem of SAA by just passing it on to new owners and then saying no, but the government will have less than controlling stake in it. I mean, effectively, the government has a third of the of SAA in this new arrangement that they propose, right? And that means that the 50-50 Takatso Consortium take the other 2/3 and split them half. So you've got three parties, the former owners of Kulula, right, who sold Kulula off just in time before it came crashing to the ground, because the new owners claim that there was nothing they could have done to save it. So which means they were really stupid for buying it, but they enjoyed the ride. It was a great experience or something to put on their resume. And I don't know why taking losses and taking investors' money or leverage money and playing with monopoly money, is a nice experience for certain executives. But for our airline industry, it's really devastating. And now you find a situation where South African customers are paying, in high line fees, number one. The industry itself has contracted with less players in the market. The sustainability of airlines in South Africa and the South African market has been called in question, for many decades. I mean, we can go from nationwide to one time to, I don't know how many small airlines have failed within this country. And for anyone to then have confidence that whoever is going to take on the project of SAA, which has already cost the taxpayer, I don't know, I think over 24 billion in bailouts or something, I don't know. It would be an ill-advised investment, I don't see Blackrock jumping at the opportunity. So there must be something else that is in it for them. And yes, the prestige of carrying South Africa's national carrier on planes that you are leasing and taking around the world, I guess, is something that is attractive for certain business people, and who knows what else they're benefiting from in other industries. But Harith claims that they've got lots of investments in logistics around the African continent, and this is just an expansion of the already growing portfolio. But yeah, I guess we'll have to take their word for it, since none of that growing portfolio is represented on publicly traded markets, so we could actually really look and see what's really cooking in the books.
Doctor, what do you know about Blackrock? Because I mean, there's rumors going around that this company, or perhaps it's not rumors, it's fact, that this company owns basically CNN, MSNBC. It's basically one of the biggest companies in the world, and it's behind almost everything.
Well, I mean, yes, hedge funds are the new banks, and it's just, an expansion of what has started through, capital markets. So BlackRock is the new big fish, but the Vanguard Group have been doing that. The Vanguard Group even innovated by allowing people to trade in, ETFs, things like the S&P 500s, indexes that, people can now invest in without actually having knowledge of the top 500 companies that they're investing in, but just by betting that the top 500 performers in the market are going to outperform the banks with regards to growing their money and their investments. So I don't think that we should make too much about who BlackRock are, right? But look at institutional capital as a whole and what it has represented in the world and in the current world order right now. And that current liberal world order, or the Anglo-American world order, the biggest hedge funds, I think they control over, $13 trillion, which is, I think, almost half the US GDP. So they're pretty big, and they've got a big influence on the media. They've got a big influence on all the advertisers in the media, and that is going to be a natural process of any ownership. But I mean, like, we could look at our own Blackrocks in South Africa in companies like Old Mutual. If you've got a policy at Old Mutual, right, and let's say you've someone in your family is bereaved, right? Who are you going to call? Naturally, you probably want to call Cape Talk, or you want to call 702, right? And complain about it. But Cape Talk or 702 is 30% owned, or Prime Media is 30% owned, or over 30% owned by Old Mutual. In fact, Old Mutual is the biggest shareholder in Prime Media. So, it's very easy for us to get, caught up in the Blackrocks of the world, because that's what's happening across the shores in America. But we've got our own Blackrocks within this country, and we've got institutional capital that is controlling the information that gets out there into the world, and that is also controlling the type of products that we are able to buy, and then also controlling who gets to produce the products that we're able to buy. And you, who is a budding entrepreneur, or a budding innovator, or a budding inventor, you need to either sell your intellectual property to these people who've got institutional capital, or you need to be one of them for you to actually be successful. And therefore, there's no meritocratic, economy anywhere. And that's the same thing that we're finding with this Takatso Consortium. It's a bunch of the same old elites who are chosen through the same unfair system, and then they're getting selected to be the ones who get to carry the national flag on an airline that is going to be, ferrying South Africans around the world.
And Nota, do you think they exercise their power? For example, they now have 30% share in independent media. Do you think any story that doesn't tie or portrays them in a positive light, they smother that story?
Not just that. I think you watched earlier in the year JJ Tabane, who's on ETV, right? ETV is e-media, and that is owned. The majority shareholder in the company that owns e-media is Johan Rupert's. I mean, I wouldn't expect Johan Rupert, right? If JJ Tabane were to be attacked somewhere, and to say something about Johan Rupert having some political influence. I think we've all seen there was that whole entire Bell Pottinger, documentary that came out, and then Johan Rupert was featured in it. You didn't see him go to ETV and E-Media and do a media tour to explain that, away. But when JJ Tabane said on DJ Smooth's Hustlers Corner podcast that Trevor Manuel had some involvement in the formation of COPE, right? Trevor Manuel was on 702 the next morning with Bongani Bengwa. He's the chairman of Old Mutual. Why is the chairman of Old Mutual on 702 in the morning with Bongani Bengwa to talk about something that is on YouTube on a channel that has less than 100,000 subscribers at the time? You understand what I'm saying? So yes, we do see examples of when people abuse their power, and institutional capital abuse their power, and institutional capital owns most of the media in this country. Takatso Consortium, they own a significant part of the media. I buy the Business Day Monday to Friday, and I support Arena Holdings, with my patronage, but I know that that support that we give them is merely a buffer to the advertising sales that they have from the same companies that are there to have their own political narrative, portrayed. I mean, when the Pala Pala revelations came about, Shanduka, spent a lot of advertising on Business Day, on Sunday Times. And we didn't see much coverage of the Phala from the Sunday Times, or much critical coverage. And at the same time, Shanduka, is founded by Cyril Ramaphosa, who's obviously implicated in the Phala scandal. Why would the Tuma Mina Foundation be buying a whole lot of advertising in Arena Holdings when there should be publications that are owned by Arena Holdings covering this Phala scandal? Because it's in the public interest. People actually want to know the facts. They want investigative journalism. They want, real stories. They want Peter Bruce to be really in on it. They want Peter Bruce to be the one who's chasing down the story. But he's not the one that's chasing down the story. In fact, he's chasing down other stories that seem to be priorities to him, but not to the public. And then we wonder, who are you selling these newspapers to if you're covering stories that are priorities to the journalists and not the public?
Nota, what was Johan Rupert's involvement with Bell Pottinger?
Well, I mean, he wasn't involved with Bell Pottinger, but I think he obviously took some advice from Bell Pottinger. Bell Pottinger have been political advisors and worked in, the reputation management business for politically exposed people for many years. Cambridge Analytica as well helped the ANC with their initial election campaign in 1994, the same Cambridge Analytica that was implicated in the Brexit scandal and the Facebook voter manipulation scandals that followed in suit after that. And there was a documentary done about what Bell Pottinger did to create the white monopoly capital, because I know, you've also experienced it now. Everywhere you go, people think you've got some of this white monopoly capital hiding. And I can see that, you're not doing too good. You got the short end of the white monopoly capital stick there, unfortunately for you. So they were creating this whole entire narrative, buying bots on Twitter, buying people to do a whole entire social media campaign, basically to save the elections for Jacob Zuma and make him seem as if he's a fighter against white monopoly capital, and white monopoly capital run and own the media. The same Sunday Times media that is owned by the what you call the Arena Holdings, which are black-owned companies as well. So Johan Rupert was then pictured in this documentary calling Lord Bell, you know what I mean, the founder of Bell Pottinger, the late, and it was orchestrated. Basically the guy had been calling Johan Rupert the whole entire time and made it so that Johan Rupert would call him back while he's on TV recording a live bulletin. And then he shows it on the camera that, oh, it's Johan Rupert that's calling me, to basically show that he's got some sort of influence or some sort of relationship with Johan Rupert. But other than that, obviously Johan Rupert owns companies that sell products. A lot of people drink Savannah, and that is distributed by Distel, and it serves, I guess, Johan Rupert's interests. Sorry, I hope you haven't lost me there.
I know you're still there.
Yeah, it serves Johan Rupert's interest to actually have vested interests or ownership of certain media platforms that can then promote the products that he's selling, and it serves anyone who's in business to actually have control of certain media platforms that can sell their products. Right now, we're discussing Johan Rupert, but obviously Johan Rupert inherits a lot of his business from his father, so it's a lot of generational wealth that he's gotten to inherit and had to manage well. to pass down to another generation of Ruperts, who then going to take on that business. But we've seen our own business person in South Africa, a young business person who's emerging right now, MacG, and he's one of the biggest creators on YouTube. And if, in terms of the influence that he has right now, he's got a lot of media influence like an ETV has, and he's used that media influence to promote his own gin brand. So he's got this Grandeur gin brand, which is now being sold at macro outlets all around the country, and, he's building his own distill of sorts through that media empire. So, it's not anything nefarious that Johan Rupert has done. You can do it too. And we're watching another young Black entrepreneur do it in South Africa, the best country for any young Black person to actually be successful. I mean, there's no better place for a Black person to be successful. There's more Black millionaires in Johannesburg than anywhere else in the world, but if you listen to the media, you'd think it'd be terrible to be a Black person. Yeah.
It's sort of ironic that Bell Pottinger gave advice to Johan Rupert, the same company that coined the term white monopoly capital. It's sort of they clearly work both ways. There's no real loyalty to them.
It's politics. Yes. There's no friends, there's no enemies in politics. It's just politics. It's all about what's politically convenient at that particular time, And yes, and everyone's expendable. And Johan Rupert did say that he felt used, but I mean, he also did use them when he needed to use them. So,
what is your opinion of a man like Rob Hershoff?
Well, Rob Hershoff, much like Johan Rupert, comes from a family that has done well in South Africa in business, and that makes him very unlikable. Nobody likes the capitalists, the winners in this unfair system, because whether you're Black or you're white, chances are in South Africa, you're not part of the elite. It's very few families that are part of the elite, and most Black people, most white people, most colored people are not part of the elite. We equally share that. That's why, when you go into the road in traffic, you see white people, Black people, all kinds of people in traffic. If white people were so rich, they wouldn't be in traffic. If they had that monopoly capital, so I don't think the capital has to do intrinsically with their whiteness. And that's what the media try to create. And they've done a successful job of that. But, the one thing about people who travel, whether you're a Black person that travels or you're a white person that travels, people that travel the world are generally more affluent than those that stay in the native countries that they come from, and are generally more adventurous, generally more entrepreneurial, generally do more to thrive and survive. And, obviously European immigrants that come to Africa are going to, do a lot better than people that stayed in Europe and just remained there. And also Africans that remained in Africa where it's pleasant are not going to be doing as well or as upwardly mobile as those that left our shores and went to make something of themselves elsewhere. So those are things that people don't generally understand about people when they see them. So Rob Hershoff knows that he's got this disadvantage. So right now, what he needs to be able to do is go on a charm offensive. He needs to seem like a billionaire that's got this privilege, but a billionaire that cares as well, that's using his privilege for good, and that's using his privilege to speak truth to power, and that's using his privilege to be a voice for the voiceless. And he's got a lot of that work to do, but he doesn't have the media platform that Johan Rupert has. Johan Rupert has been able to do that work through e-media, through training journalists, through training broadcasters, through ensuring that there's a certain...
Aren't they friends? So you should just call him and say, I want some attention.
Yeah, but it's not like Johan Rupert is going to give him all the attention that he needs or requires right now, So Biz News is willing to give Rob Hershoff a lot of attention. They're covering him a lot. He's got a lot of other independent media people that have been speaking to him. But I guess, it's very evident that there's a changing of the guard, right? And South Africa is going into coalition politics. So the people that had their hands in the pockets of the ANC in the past, right, are going to need to find new political agents, new political agents to act on their behalf. And Rob Hersoff is looking to be, grooming that, for himself to take advantage of. Business is politics, and you need to be able to influence politics because politics influences the laws that you are able to exploit as a business person to make a profit. So that's all that is. And he knows that he needs to be popular in the new dispensation. And what better way to be popular than to go around on podcasts and say the popular things that other billionaires don't get to say.
Yeah, I just think he's charismatic. He's just not very politically astute. I think sometimes he just rants and says stupid things. But that might get me in trouble saying that. But anyway.
No, well, I mean, in trouble with you. I mean, look, I guess he's encouraging a festival of ideas, right? But for me, I think he's going to be very useful. I think that he's not the sharpest tool in the multi-millionaire shed. And there are a lot of sharper tools that are going to now feel the need to maybe counter the narrative that he's putting out there. So if he's just going to be the straw that breaks the camel's back, then so be it.
Yeah, absolutely.
But we need a lot more from our South Africa elite, speaking. I listened to a very interesting interview by Neil Froneman, who's the chairman at Sibanye Stillwater, and I own shares in Sibanye Stillwater, and well, just like anyone else can, just I invest in it, and I invest primarily because of him. When I listen to that man speak, I listen to a man with a proper vision, and I know that he's been challenged, he's been politically challenged, I know that the unions have been, baying for his head as well. But I think as far as leadership goes, from our mining companies, and we know that this economy has been built on the mining industrial complex, he's the best that we have. And we need to be empathetic of the position that he's in, and also try to understand how we can help our mining industry better benefit our country. Because yes, even though he gets a 360 million rand a bonus, the potholes still burst his tires just like they do mine.
Yeah. Nota, to pivot, your interview with Penuel the Black Pen was very interesting, and in the start of that interview, you mentioned, you talked about race. What is race, and why is there no such thing as race?
Yeah, so obviously race has been a social construct that we've had to do basically to create political majorities where we've had minorities, so in certain instances when we're in certain tribes, we count out, okay, what are the numbers in this tribe? And if there's conflicts in this tribe, we try to resolve it by saying, okay, the majority should win. And if that wasn't possible, then, there'd be other ways to diminish the other party's minority through violence, and try to subjugate them. And that's the battle that, has been waged throughout civilization, whether it be a battle of ideas, a battle of ideologies, if you even look at religion, we've been in wars and battles where, the Catholics are trying to, be in the seniority over the Muslims who are trying to be in seniority over the Jews, and they create races out of that. So now we've got a Jewish race that becomes a construct. And then we have, a supreme Jewish race that becomes a construct in the Holocaust, and then, Judaism then gets, analogized with whiteness, and then now you've got, Orthodox white Judaism. And, you've forgotten about the Judaism that, originated in Ethiopia some eons ago, and obviously the people that were living there in Ethiopia were not white, so this is exactly how race is actually constructed. It's actually based on convenience. You know what I mean? So when it's convenient for Jewish people to be white, Jewish people are white. And when it's not convenient for Jewish people to be white, we get Adolf Hitler saying Jewish people should be exterminated. Do you understand what I'm saying? And the wheel can spin in a number of ways, and it can spin around for any and everybody. And right now, it's very convenient in certain places to be Black. Like in South Africa, you've got a whole lot of Black privilege. You know what I mean? As a Black person, like let's say you're a rapper, right? You're a white guy rapper. It's very, very difficult as a white guy rapper to make it in South Africa, because most of the people that would need to resonate with your raps would be Black people. So you don't have the social capital that a Black person would have in South Africa. So right now you'd be quote unquote Black, and that would be the construct, but you're not Black. Do you understand? And that is exactly what race is. What race is about deciding at a certain point in time which people are lesser or superior to others based on a certain ideology or a certain belief that certain people should be favored over others.
So there's no clear genetic proof that, for example, just because I have a white skin and you have a black skin, that we should necessarily have different characteristics. It's just random. There's no skin has almost nothing really to do with anything.
Exactly, and that's why, like the Tutsis and the Hutus, when they had the genocide in Rwanda, there was no real way to differentiate between the two races.
Yeah,
but they were killing each other because they believed they were two separate races. And they could exterminate one another. So
that's crazy. I interviewed a survivor of the genocide, and he said it's almost stupid because they couldn't really even determine the difference between the Tutsi and the Hutu. It's purely just the identity card. But other than that, the guy could be a Hutu or Tutsi, and you wouldn't even really know. It's probably one of crazy.
You understand what I'm saying? But they were in their mind, there were two races, and you can just see how insane it is that if we can believe that we are two separate races, we can then be driven to kill each other, and that's exactly what happened.
And how do you think is this slowly gaining momentum that we're moving away from the idea of race? Do you see hope that we are now looking at each other as individuals and not black or white?
I think that is exactly the challenge that the political agents are actually finding. They're finding that it is easier to control us if we're divided because of race. And we're realizing that we're not divided because of race. Because, again, like I said, whether you're me or you're Neil Froneman, if there's a pothole on William Nicol as you're driving there, you know what I mean? It's going to burst both our tires and we're both affected, you know what I mean? And our race is not going to save us there, or our perceived race is not going to save us there. And as that's happening, then the politicians realize that they need to stoke racial divisions more and more. They need to divide us more and more and more and more and more. And that's what you're getting. And to what end? Because we've seen what these racial divisions actually do. We've seen how ridiculous it is where you've got Hutus and Tutsis who can't identify the difference between one another, except for the fact that one deserves to kill the other. And that's exactly what they're saying they want. They want us to be at a civil war. They want us to be constantly at war. And we are constantly at war right now. I mean, it's complete warfare. If you look at what's happening in the United States of America, for example, the United States of America has been in a protracted civil war since 2016. Ever since Donald Trump won the election, they've been in an open civil war. Because when Donald Trump won the election, right, anything that was said about him as a political opponent, right, prior, right, was then going to not be said because it's reserved for political opponents when we are actually opposing one another as political opponents in an election season, right? To that end, there's a political contest that needs to be now concluded, right? That political contest was never concluded. There was never a peaceful handover of power when Donald Trump took office. It was a hostile handover of power when Donald Trump took office, right? And that set in motion from that point onwards that every handover of power, right, is going to be hostile. Do you understand?
Yeah, it's crazy also this tendency now just to impeach every president. I mean, the US president. I mean, that it just destroys the credibility of the entire thing.
Of the contest, as in, like, why did we have an election if you're going to now contest the election by impeaching the president?
Yeah.
You're saying that the outcome of the election is irrelevant and that the population, right, are too stupid to decide a leader for themselves, and that the political agents, right, who have been elected to represent the will of the people need to go against the will of the people for the benefit of the people who are acting in their own worst interests because they know not what's best for them, because the information about what's best for them is being hidden from them by the same political actors who then say, we hide this information because it's in your best interest that we keep the secret from you, and then expect them to trust that these same political actors are not benefiting, right, from the misery that befalls the same public who are not participating in, the rulemaking that happens in the Senate, in the Congress, when the laws are being decided upon. And then your Nancy Pelosi then able to benefit because her husband is able to trade with no restrictions and benefit from the same policies that are benefiting the companies that he's invested in, and the public are then being shielded from all of this. And there's a growing mistrust in the system in general. And then the public are being told, no, the system is to be trusted. The system is legitimate. You just called this system fallible. You said that the Russians could infiltrate the system and sway the election for 4 years. And then you said, no, this system is actually foolproof. No one can sway it. And that Donald Trump needs to vacate office. Obviously, January 6th is going to come about. Obviously, people are going to feel frustrated. And when those people then exact their frustrations out there, you say, you see, this is exactly what Donald Trump created. He created a mistrust in the democratic system. But you are the ones who called him to question the democratic system throughout his entire incumbency. And that's why I say that the Americans' democracy is in a state of civil war right now. The two opponents are not going to hear what the other has to say. They are just trying to destroy and kill one another, at all costs. And we're just hearing a battle from the two extremes. Just that in this war, it's more of a cyber warfare. And I guess cyberbullying and cyber warfare have taken out the violence. You don't have to shoot your enemy in the street. You can just tweet something, or you can dox someone and make their life a living hell.
Yeah, the one great thing about South Africa is that because the ANC is so terrible, people are generally unified in the sense that we have to get rid of them. That's at least that unifies a lot of South Africans and coalitions and politicians. But I mean, when it's not so clear in the United States, then it's insane that a country that has so much to be grateful about, I mean, a first world country, can be in such a state of turmoil.
Yeah, that's what happens when you have a duopoly, where you've got two opposing forces, and that's what happens. You'll get those two opposing forces will then be incentivized to be extreme opposing forces, and the extreme ends on either side will then battle to basically destroy the middle. And once the middle has been destroyed, what you're looking at is, a tennis match, a volleyball match, where people are swinging from one extreme to the other extreme to try and find some semblance of balance, because the center never actually ever holds. So the center just zigzags. And that's what we're going to be watching it's going to be a tennis match from the Democrats to the Republicans on either end, as either gives a chance to, be as extreme as they can be. Meanwhile, in the middle, you're making incremental zigzags on either side and hoping that there's progress. And it's a battle of attrition. And that's what they signed up for when they, had the Democrats and the Republicans. They gave them so much power. In South Africa, we didn't have that system. We had a multi-party system. And that's the benefit of having a multi-party system. And now, as the ANC falls, we are looking at the division of power between the other smaller parties who are now battling it out to say whose idea of an alternative to the ANC is the best idea. And I think that the more different ideas we have in that, the better for South Africa. I think the South African model is much better than the American model. I think that the South African constitution is much more advanced than the American constitution, and that bodes us well, as we go into this new world. And think about it like this: we haven't faced the loss and the casualties of war, and those losses are in our moral, our moral credibility. South Africa's voice is still untainted. People can call us out and say, hey, South Africa is neutral in this Ukraine conflict, but we're not bombing kids in Yemen. So I think we win on those grounds. And we're not Russia either, nor are we China, who starved some of their population, either of them. We're not Cuba either. We haven't committed any of those atrocities. And yes, we have got our own checkered past. We've got our own history. We also had to battle it out for our own identity as South Africans. And we need to look at that as something that emboldens us into having something to fight for within the future, because South Africa was not, wasn't up in place, so to speak, to actually get to this country that we have. Where we can enjoy a in place together.
Yeah, I love that analogy of we spoke about the duopoly in the United States, and that sort of feeds into the common understanding about people have that you're either a demon or an angel. And because we don't have that in South Africa, we have multiple parties. It's much more difficult to do that. I mean, you can't. Otherwise, you have to. It's multiple angels or multiple demons, and then obviously it becomes relative.
Well, I mean, everybody's got their own smolanyana skeletons. In South Africa, we accept that about each other. We're like, everybody's got their. In South Africa, no one is innocent, and we accept that about each other. You know what I mean? Nobody's innocent. Nobody's innocent. Black people are not innocent. White people are not innocent. Indian people are not innocent. All of us have got our own kak. You know what I mean? And that's why, you know what I mean? And we need to accept that. And we need to embrace that. And we need to embrace the fact that we can call each other out on our cut. You know what I mean? Because that's the South Africanness in us. You know what I mean? That is what makes us South African.
Yeah, we're definitely much less politically correct than the rest of the world.
Yes, exactly. You know what I mean? And we should never fall into that trap of trying to be politically correct and everything else, because that takes away the honesty of actually being able to critically analyze things, and that stops us from, humanizing one another. We are human beings. We can be critical of one another. I mean, look at this. Let me put it to you like this, right? I was saying, okay, fine. You cancel Will Smith because he slapped Chris Rock, right? Who tells some nice jokes. Okay, now who's going to fill up your cinema? Chris Rock. Okay, you cancel Leon Schuster. And now you wonder why no one's working at Ster-Kinekor. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you can say, for example, that whatever joke he made was inappropriate, but I mean, it's a massive step to now cancel the person, to say, okay, you can never make jokes again. I mean, we all make improper jokes now and then. It's sort of, we should have a relative response.
Who else fills cinemas like Leon Schuster?
Yeah. I mean, he's sort of like a hero to South Africans.
Okay, so now take him out of the cinemas, and then who's making popcorn?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You're losing jobs. You understand what I'm saying? The consequences of your actions, And I'd like to look at a payroll statement from Leon Schuster's productions, but I think that there are more black hands that earn from Leon Schuster Productions than anybody else. So, again, they lose as well, and with all that's been invested in Leon Schuster and Leon Schuster's productions, we can't lose, a cinematic icon like that, because our cinema industry is suffering right now. TV kills cinema because you're not supposed to see your favorite or your best actors on the TV. That's too cheap. You pay too little money to see them. You're supposed to take out the effort. You're supposed to go to the cinema and watch them. You know what I mean? And you're supposed to buy popcorn, and it's supposed to be a family event. You know what I mean? And you're supposed to make memories out of it. You're supposed to take pictures, and you're supposed to talk about the times you went to the cinema at Christmas. You know what I mean? And at the time that you're watching the movie at Christmas, you're remembering a movie that you've watched in the cinemas. You've got that experience. And that's how you've got big stars. And that's why when you drive on the streets and you see Charlize Theron and is selling this J'adore Christian Dior, you want to buy it, right? Because when you see Charlize Theron, you're seeing her in the cinema. Now, if you cancel Charlize Theron, and then the only place you can see her is on Apple TV, which is where they put Will Smith now, you are destroying the capital that you built up, because she fills up cinemas. You understand what I'm saying? She fills up cinemas. I was watching Top Gun Maverick with my dad for Father's Day. Why? Because that's what me and my father did. We went to the cinema to watch Tom Cruise growing up. You know what I mean? So that's what I'm doing right now. I'm watching Tom Cruise, with my dad. And so many kids have done that for generations. You know what I mean? Other kids watch Robert Downey Jr. Now you take Will Smith out of the cinemas. Who's going to the cinema? You know what I mean? You take Leon Schuster out of the cinema. Who's going to the cinema? And why? And what is it that Leon Schuster did that got him cancelled? What did he say? What did he actually do? And who is this competitor of Leon Schuster that benefits from Leon Schuster being taken out of cinemas? Nobody, because we haven't seen anybody replace him. You know what I mean? So the South African industry has lost out. And that's the same thing that we're seeing right now with the cancellation of or pseudo cancellation of Kanye West. You know what I mean? I guess he's showing the hypocrisy of the media as well. It's if you cancel Kanye West, who's going to fill up the stadiums? You know what I mean? Again, who's going to make your sneakers?
Well, a lot of times I don't think a lot of thought goes into this. It's almost like an emotional outburst. A lot of these people have something underlying problems, and they just use Leon Schuster or Kanye West or whatever to throw their problems at someone. And then the next week they move on to someone else.
My thing is this, is that Leon Schuster has not killed anybody. He's not a mass murderer or anything else, right? Kanye West hasn't killed anybody. He's not a mass murderer. But right now we're being sold that we must watch some mass murderer on Netflix. That's what we're being told. We must watch some mass murderer. And now everybody and their dunnies, every dunny is now talking about the serial killer. Everybody's dunny is talking about the serial killer. I don't know if you've realized this. All our dunnies love this murder mystery guys and everything else. And then you hear about these murderers that have got your dunny now sending them money, and they're behind bars and everything. And you're like, what is actually happening? You know what I mean? And it's the glorification of, the most monstrous of people as well, and the normalization of their crimes as well, and the demonization of people who are actually doing great things, who are doing amazing things. It's the innovations that Kanye has had just in shoe technology. He's changed how shoes are. He's simplified them, and also the shoe production, as well. And he's made it possible for shoe brands to not have to all be made in China, because he's simplified the manufacturing process for the molds and the 3D printing. He made those innovations cool, and him making those innovations cool made them commercially viable. And because it's commercially viable, more people are going to invest in the machinery to manufacture those types of goods, right? So those are the innovations that Kanye has driven. And now you've got a local company like Drip, who have criticized a lot because they used to import shoes from Alibaba, you know what I mean? But now they're manufacturing their own sort of Crocs locally. They've got their own molds. So now they're building factories, and now those shoes are getting more and more popular. They've even done a collaboration with an international fashion brand, an Italian brand, Fila. So now there's a local brand that's doing a local collaboration, right? And that's now saying, okay, fine, we need to now invest more in buying our local brands because we're uplifting them, right? And then you won't get the anger and outrage when our Olympic team goes out there in veldskoene, because people would have been trained to support local products. But you're not going to make people wear veldskoene unless you've got Leon Schuster putting veldskoene in the movies and making people outrun, a lion because they've got veldskoene on in a Leon Schuster movie. You know what I mean? You need to create that imagination, and you need Leon Schuster to create that imagination. He's a genius for that. And we cannot now kill our geniuses, our the people that actually constructed the unity in this country. You understand? The people that actually put us together and put us in the cinema to laugh together when we're watching the Zulu on My Stoop. You understand what I'm saying? All of us in a cinema together, black, white, Indian, colored, you name it, and it's a travesty that this race baiting that continues to benefit certain people is tearing this country apart. But what's unfortunate for them is that, it might have worked in America because of the duopoly, but in South Africa, it's not going to work so much. They're the ones who are going to end up with eggs on their faces because South Africans are not going to sign up for that. I mean, you saw that last year in the July unrest. They tried to stoke the violence, and they've been talking about it. Thabo Mbeki saying, "Oh, this country is going to burn. South Africans are gonna burn this country to ashes. We're gonna turn it down, brother." We've won 3 Rugby World Cups. No other country has done that. We're not going to burn this country down and squander all of that.
Yeah, and I mean, it's really underrated, like you said, that Leon Schuster is a genius. I mean, really, his jokes are next level. I mean, it's incredible the creativity that goes into his pranks. He fools people because every time his pranks are so good. It's so unbelievable that, I mean, being a Dutch journalist interviewing Helen Zille, I mean, who would think of that? I mean, he's really creative.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. You know what I mean? And he's been able to take us to places where other people have not gotten. And he's been clapped. He's been kicked. He's been, what hasn't been done to Leon Schuster? Except for cancellation. You know what I mean? The only thing that actually really hurt him was cancellation. You know what I mean? Everything else, it did not hurt him. And now the country hurts.
Nota, one last question. Was Nelson Mandela a sellout?
Look, this question is a very difficult question to answer because, when you answer it, there are certain people who feel sold out by Nelson Mandela. And yes, was Nelson Mandela a sellout? Yes, he was a sellout. He was a sellout to those people who wanted to see this country burn. He's a sellout to those people who wanted to keep us at war forever. Yes, most definitely. He's a sellout to those people who did not want to have a compromise. Yes, he's a sellout to those people who did not want to build a national identity. But to those of us who believe in the Rainbow Nation project, for those of us who believe in, unity and diversity, for those of us who believe in the post-apartheid South Africa, and well, I guess we can't call it post-apartheid South Africa. We call it the post-national party dispensation. For those of us who believe in the potential of that product or of that project, right? He could never be a sellout. He is our father, and he has given us something that we can fight for even in his absence. You and I together are here speaking in this space because we are inspired by the vision that Nelson Mandela sacrificed his life for, and we know that we benefit greatly from the fact that we are the children of Nelson Mandela anywhere in the world that we go. You just say you're South African and you see the smile on people's faces anywhere in the world because of Nelson Mandela, and how great of a man he's been. And so we benefit a lot from the sacrifices that he made. And if some people have to call him a sellout, I think he's comfortable with that sacrifice as well.
I couldn't agree more. And yeah, Nota, I really love this discussion. I see we're well over time. I want to give you one last opportunity if you want to say something or answer a question that you'd hoped I'd ask you.
No, I mean, like, no, thank you. I think I'd like us to have a lot more engagements, a lot more conversations, going forward. There's a lot of work that we need to do to build this country, to build the unity in this country. There's one thing that I want to put out there into the ethos. I've been speaking to Steve Hofmeyr's manager for a long time because Tiens Jordan actually connected me with her before he passed away. Rest in peace to him. And he's reluctant to do podcast interviews, right? So, so I'm putting it out there on WorldView. If anyone knows Steve Hofmeyr, I've already contacted his manager, so I've got those contacts in charge. I'd really like him to do or challenge him to do a nice interview with Podcast and Chill with Mag G, because I think he's also a grossly misunderstood South African, and he's got great potential to contribute to a greater unity within this country as well. No one who's got a voice that unifies so many people. He's also a stadium filler as well, so that's also great. I've had the benefit of producing music. So I produced, obviously, some people who are watching this wouldn't know, for Questa. And he's got a couple big songs, but one of the biggest songs being Good. And one of the greatest pleasures in my life is that when the Springboks, the biggest stadium fillers South Africa has, play in the stadium, on many occasions, that song plays on the big speakers and rocks the crowd, and Steve Hofmeyr is one of those people. He's got a lot of stadium rockers. And people who've got stadium rockers, are geniuses that need to be protected and need to be nurtured as well, because we need to produce more of them. And so that's the one last thing, if you can do that, now that I've put it out there and on WorldView, I'm hoping your audience, someone sympathetic or close to him, will say, hey, please go out there on Podcast and Chill with Mag G and give them a little bit of your life story so that people can relate to you a lot more, and we can get a lot more people that actually love this country, that can sing its praises. You know what I mean? Because Steve Hofmeyr is one of the greatest lovers of this country. And if you listen to the lyrics of his songs, that's all you hear is his love for this country.
Well, that would be an awesome episode. And I think to more generalize, I think older people in general, Black, white, Indian, need to step up and stop with this, I'm retired, I'm not involved in South Africa politics anymore. They need to step up and start speaking out. I mean, like Rob Hershoff, they definitely have something to contribute to South African society. It's not just the young people that have to fill in the shoes of doing things. But
yeah. Exactly, but I guess Steve Hofmeyr is still young.
Oh yeah, that's true. Well, yeah.
Let's not offend him.
He probably says, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, Nota, thank you so much for this. This has been an awesome conversation. To our viewers, share his message by liking this video, sharing this widely as possible, and subscribing to our channel. My name is Donald, and you've been watching WorldView.
Thank you. Hi, Mom.